Hello, Starknet fam. This is Nurstar speaking, and welcome to a special episode of the Star Cafe Twitter Space program. As today we are holding a very promising roundtable discussion on on-chain gaming. Six representatives from this fascinating space will be taking part in this panel, brought to you in collaboration with Dylance, an on-chain game experimenting with dynamic NFTs. And we also have their product manager, John, who will help me moderating this roundtable on the Starknet gaming and autonomous worlds scene. With that being said, let me welcome my co-host for the day. Hello, John. How is it going?
Hello everyone, my name is John. I'm come from the island and I'm good and I'm so happy to be here to be a co-host with this epic space today with No Star.
Very good. I'm so happy to have you here, John. Well, before introducing our epic lineup, tell us the reason why we are here and the goal of this panel, please.
Yeah, great. So the reason we came up with this idea is coming from one of Louis' tweets about he has a friend from a casual gaming company just saying that crypto community is the worst and they are not really interested in the Web3 gaming, right? And for me as a Web3 builder and has been around in the space for like years, this statement just like spark a lot of question in me, and I think it's a great idea that today we gather, start OG builder within the space so that we can share the opinion regarding this matter, especially within the authentically growing Starknet community. So that's why we have this space today.
Very good, John. Thanks a lot for this awesome preface and for the interest of the audience. I also posted the original post from Luis about his views on this matter. And well, it is now finally time to welcome our guests, starting with Luis, ecosystem lead at Starkware and member of the ecosystem onboarding committee at the Starknet Foundation. Gian from the Influence MMO game that recently released their mainnet version. Gabe from Cartridge and core contributor of the Dojo for the Dojo on-chain gaming engine. Sylv from Brick NFT and core contributor at Dojo. And yeah, and that's all for the time being. For starting with the panel, let me say some things about how this space will work like. So it will be divided into two parts. The first one will see our guests taking around 4-5 minutes each to talk about the macro topic of the day, following the same order I used to mention them. And the second part will consist in smaller follow-ups and open conversations. And the space would probably last longer than 40 minutes or so. And therefore, during the second part, if any guests needs to leave, do not hesitate to do so, and we'll continue with the ones who can stay a little bit longer. Enough said on my side. So, John, let's kick off this roundtable about on-chain gaming, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm asking some question for all the guests, so that we can discuss about this, on-chain gaming and especially the Web3 gaming scenes within Starknet. So, you know, as a builder in Starknet, we can proudly say that Starknet community is growing day by day authentically, and there are so many projects with great vision being built. But like one of Louis' tweet friends from Casual Coming Company saying that they are still hold some negative thought regarding the space, regarding the Web3 game scenes. So the big question that we would love to hear from opinion from Louis, from Gabe, from Jeans and from Sylv, who are currently constantly building on Starnet, is that how do we improve the reputation of Starnet Web3 gaming within the space since, and how do we attract not just non-crypto native gamers but also casual traditional gaming company to start building on Starknet. So that's the big question that we would love to ask for today. And I think Louis really want to, share his opinion regarding this. So Louis, could you share some of your opinion about this matter and about these questions?
Sure. So sorry, there got a bit of a noise nearby. Can you just repeat the question very briefly? I'm sorry, I just got distracted.
Yeah, no worries. So the question I would love to hear your opinion is, how do we improve the reputation of Starknet
Uh,
Web3 gaming in the space
of
since?
course, of course. I mean, I think the
Yeah,
problem is not about Starknet per se. Starknet is just a tool for a purpose, and the purpose is, can we have autonomous words and word that will live forever, regardless of who's running the operation beneath it. So, um, and so the first point I want to sort of like bring up is, very often when I ask people about the news word and talk to them about it, they have no idea why people would care. Why people would care about the news word? Why would they care about on-chain gaming? Why don't they can they play on their phone and play this very ugly game, not this AAA but like very casual game? And that's actually what we're referring to my friend, this CEO, and that's actually what he was trying to say. It was like, whenever you start a new gaming company, what you try to start with is a base community, and that base community is the one that's going to carry you around and vouch for you and bring you the initial feedback that will allow you to get to the game, which is to the standard that you would get adoption afterwards. And so the main issue I have when we were talking about crypto game is the point he was trying to make, is that the community around Azuki, around those massive NFT that we saw in the last cycle, is that they are only flippers, only speculators. They are not here for the atmosphere. They're not here for the universe of those NFTs. And so my perspective is more than just Starknet, is what does autonomous word bring to the world, and more than just what they bring to the world is what do they bring to the casual user, the end user that doesn't truly care about the perspective of crypto. And so I think this is the most important aspect of that puzzle. And I'm not an autonomous word guy. I'm not an on-chain word. I have my answers to that, but I would let it to the real gamers and the real builders to answer that question. And I would love to hear what they have to say about it.
absolutely great input. So we have here Jean from Influence, who actually building an on-chain game. So what is your opinion on what Louis has said, and how do we build a great, and more authentic crypto community to gain more user and uh, doing so by doing so? Jeans.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think I want to follow up with a little bit about, what Lewis said here is, Starknet doesn't matter in quotes. I'm putting that in giant air quotes because you can't see me. Starknet matters a lot, but for a gamer, like, they don't know if they're using Unity or Unreal Engine or whatever, the technology is that the game's built on top of, and they shouldn't have to care. Similar to like the internet, try asking 10 people, how does the internet work? And I guarantee you most of them will not have a single clue. And I think that's what we need to abstract these blockchains to, is that they just simply work and people can trust them. We aren't there yet. There is quite a barrier still that we need to kind of break through. And I really think that we're going to do that. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But for gaming, it's attracting users and having those people play your game. And, I spent a lot of time and energy thinking about this. And instead of pushing forward and throwing blockchain in their face, what I love about Starknet is we have something, built in here. Account abstraction is native, and we have a lot of really interesting tools from the wallet providers that allow us to no longer make it so that blockchain is just thrown in their face all the time. And so with, session keys and other account abstraction tools, we're ending up with games that can just simply be played, similar to games that have been played for, decades. And so if that's the case, then we can just go and start talking to, larger accounts, content creators on various channels, and showing them our games and having their audience, having them share the games with their audiences. And over time, you start to attract people to your games. Now, there's a lot of different strategies. There's a lot of different ways to get people here. But I think at the end of the day is just we need to make games fun. We need to make people want to play these games, and we need to continue to make our tools better and better, and that the underlying structure isn't something that's encumbering our players to, make it so that they're like, well, I like this ownership thing, but is it worth the challenge of having to sign 100 transactions every time I play? Like there shouldn't be those huge trade-offs. There's just some differences in blockchain as well. I mean, you're not going to get away from having a wallet unless you want someone to custody that for you. But I think most of us on Starknet would say that that's bad in a lot of ways. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to ramble on any more. And I think it's just going to take time, energy, effort, and good products that people are going to enjoy.
Thank you, Jeans, for your opinion. I absolutely, agree with you regarding we have to build, focus on the side of being fun to attract, gamers to stay, not just for the perspective of making money or flip NFT or anything else. Games should be fun, and it should, eliminate all the hassle of using, blockchain, no matter what chain they are on. Uh, and speaking regarding games, we have Gabe from Kajik and also a core builder for Dojos who is building the engine to build like on-chain gaming on Starknet. So what is your opinion regarding this matter and from your point of view? So we would love to hear it from you, Gabe.
Great. Yeah, I'm Gabe from the Cartridge team. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm going to attempt to answer this question from kind of the other perspective. So I think Etherway and Louis have done a great job of kind of talking about why players would care about, games on Starknet. And I think that there's a lot of great materials and blog posts and stuff like that you can kind of sink your teeth into if you're interested in autonomous worlds and fully on-chain games and things like that. I think the other side of this question, though, is why developers would care. And, to answer that question, I think there's a little bit of history. I think, there's a number of teams that have kind of recognized early on the incredible things that Starknet as a fundamental technology enables as far as games go. The Influence team was certainly one of them, kind of out in the trenches trying to build a game, in an earlier version of Cairo, when things were, kind of, less clear and more difficult to do. But, over the course of the last year and a half, I would say, there have been a lot of builders who have kind of recognized the promise of building games on Starknet and what that enables. And that community has built a tremendous amount of tooling and infrastructure to really enable building games in this ecosystem. And so you mentioned Dojo. I'm sure Sil will talk about Dojo as well, but Dojo is a provable game engine for building games on Starknet. That ecosystem has now kind of gotten to the point where you can build a game in a weekend. And so we've started doing these game jams, the second of which actually just ended this Sunday. So, they're Friday to Sunday, 72-hour period, and the whole Dojo community comes together to build games. We had 15 games come out of this last game jam. So the ecosystem, I'd say, is continuing to grow at a tremendous pace. And the more tooling that comes out, the more we improve Dojo, the faster these teams can iterate and continue to make games. And I think it's really that kind of volume and the speed of iteration that's going to help drive the Starknet gaming ecosystem. Because the reality is, answering the question, why should players care, is really difficult, right? You can't predict the future. And I think that it's going to take this kind of like iterative, nature of like lots of people building games to uncover these cool things that become enabled when you build a game on Starknet. So I don't know, anybody who's written off the Starknet gaming system, I just don't think is paying attention.
Great. Thank you, Gabe. It's such a refreshing perspective from a builder on the dev side, because I think that we talk about how to attract community, how to attract players, but we forget one thing, that if we don't have, enough tools to build great project, or project is not good enough, then eventually we won't have any players come to join the Web3 games, or we won't have any community. And speaking about community, I think Sylv hears from Brit NFT. He's really cool about building a community, because I remember I met you last time in Starknet CC, and I asked you about how do we maintaining and building such a vibrant community, and you just say just be cool, create memes and vibing, right? So I would love to ask you, what is your perspective about regarding this matter also, and how do we build a ever better community for the Starknet game scenes? Sylv.
Yeah, indeed, my answer hasn't changed a lot. I think there's building community is it's something that you have to be very conscious of, and something that you also need to let happen. If I think back on the very early days of Starknet, it turned out that a lot of the projects that decided to build on Starknet, I'm talking about October, November 2021, were gaming projects, because they were brought to Starknet because they believed that it gave them affordances that they wouldn't have on other networks. Realms, for instance, was initially, I think, on Arbitrum, and decided in October, you can look at their Discord, to move over to Starknet. So there was already something there. It just turns out that you let things happen and just people congregate. Terrence from Cartridge, Lo from Realms, Chris from Influence, and myself from Brick. We interacted very quickly. Same thing for Guilty Gear from Topology. I think the moment where we really started to have a conscious effort towards building such a community was when Lof and I built the first dojo repo, and I think this was in December, like December 12th, 2022. It was like a year after this, and very quickly, people congregated on Telegram and said, "Oh, I would like to work on this. I would like to work on that." But you can't inception it out of thin air. You need to already have interest. And that was the great thing that we had about Starknet. And so far, I mean, I think we've been doing we can give ourselves a pat on the back. We've been doing a pretty good job at this. As Gabe mentioned, we have, on the 2 game jams that we've organized, we had more than 100 attendees, more than 10, 15 games that we're building in 72 hours every single time, which is just incredible. And these are, we're now in the, I would say, in the money time, where we're seeing people who are getting into Dojo, who are getting into Starknet through Dojo, but they were not on Starknet in the beginning. They're getting, in a sense, sniped because they're interested about on-chain games, they're interested about gaming, want to see what is possible. Therefore, they go to Dojo, and Dojo is this sort of gateway to the rest of Starknet. So it was kind of a very symbiotic relationship between the community came to Starknet in the beginning because of the tech, and now more people are coming to Starknet thanks to the games themselves. And yeah, as you said, just do a lot of memes. We say Ohio every morning on Dojo. Lucky for us, we have June on the Cartridge team, who's Japanese, so that it's actually okay if we do this.
Great. Thank you for all of your answers. Now, Nurs, back to you. Would you want to sum up and come to the next part of this space, where we ask more deeper questions regarding the tech and regarding, what factor for the next in the future?
Awesome. Yeah, awesome, John. Well, very good thoughts by our guests here. And before transitioning to the second part of our roundtable, let me wrap up some of the considerations that came up from this first half of this panel, where our guests suggested the following points that will help us attracting gamers and projects from the traditional game scene. And some of them were like creating an organic and supportive community around the games, having clear use cases. Then we also highlighted the fact that gamers don't care about the underlying technology. And we should also focus, therefore we should also focus on improving the gaming UX, leveraging account abstraction features such as session wallets. And furthermore, Another point was attracting game developers thanks to a solid infrastructure, such as the Dojo gaming engine, that allows people to develop games on Starknet in a very good and fast way. And as Sil was saying, having a good infra to build games upon is very good marketing for the whole gaming scene on Starknet. And yeah, last but not least, we need to focus on creating good vibes and good memes. And I think that our ecosystem is getting pretty good at that. And yeah, this was a summary of the first half. I'm really looking forward to the second part. And having said that, I give the word back to John.
Great. Thank you, Noah. So now we come to more micro questions. So regarding the date, regarding the factor in the near future. So Sylv just recommend a really nice question that I think I need to understand. Yes.
John,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. I saw that Lof joined us, and seeing that I didn't see him during the beginning. So seeing that we are very early on the schedule, I would like to also welcome him to the space, and maybe hopefully he listened to the first question. It would be nice also to hear some phrases from him. Hello, Lof, can you hear me?
Hello, sorry I'm late. Yes, yeah, happy to be here.
Okay, it's okay. I don't know if you listened to the question. Did you remember it, or you want me to refresh it?
I missed it. I just jumped in halfway through Sylv, kind of.
Okay, I
It's
see.
all good.
So,
We can move on. It's fine.
no, just we just wanted to know like your view on how to improve the reputation of crypto gaming. From from the trad game scene. How can we attract gamers, basically?
Well, I think we can attract gamers by offering new and novel games, and experiences that haven't really been seen before, or that aren't possible with alternatives. And I think it's I don't know. I feel like often some of the kind of I don't know. I hesitant to say, but like some of the really big projects in this space, they're trying to go after like the gaming industry is enormous, and trying to go up against and build huge flashy graphics right now, and go up against mainstream games with games that are really only have like one layer of crypto added to it. Maybe it's just NFTs or something. To me, is like a lost cause. I mean, your lunch is going to be eaten every day trying to do that. But yeah, I mean, on-chain games bring a whole new novel design space, and a lot like a lot more new interesting experiences. And so I think your traditional gamer that's like doesn't really care about the speculation, and let's be real, like a lot of the last bull run was all driven by speculation. A lot of this market is still driven by speculation. Like we can't deny that. But what's going to bring this new next big cohort of gamers is offering new exciting experiences that they couldn't play elsewhere. And I think for the on-chain games, whether it be highly competitive session-based games that you use the blockchain for escrow and you use the blockchain for anti-cheat. That to me is how we're going to lure the next big cohort of gamers, outside of the people that are here already. And it's not really hyper financialization; it's just new experiences. So and as Sylv touched on, the Dojo community right now is really powering ahead with that. There's a lot of experimentation every day going on. The ecosystem's growing, the tool chain's getting better every day, and so it's just a matter of time. We just need to keep experimenting, and eventually some of these teams will crack the a very sticky, interesting, novel game using this medium. But we need this big, massive experimentation right now.
Definitely, Love. Thanks a lot for sharing your view on the matter. And we can now continue with the second part of our show. So, John, feel free to resume.
Yeah, thank you, Star. Thank you, Love. So there's a question, really interesting question from Sylv that he is suggesting we discuss, is that what validity and ZK proof can add to games to not only create on-chain games, but provable games. And honestly, for me, when I read this question, it's really interesting, but I'm not too much on the tech side to fully understand what is the potential of it. So, Sylv, could you elaborate more the question and maybe give you some opinion, and then we'll ask some of the other guys here to input more insight on what do they think about provable games. Sylv?
Absolutely. So, if you look at current blockchain games right now, they tend to only have a very limited set of features running on the blockchain. If you look at CryptoKitties, if you look at Axie Infinity, what they leverage blockchain for is the assets. Your assets are living on the blockchain, they're NFTs, but the core gameplay, the actual backend of the game, is not running on the blockchain. So there's the whole on-chain gaming community is trying to explore what new affordances and new experiences, as Loaf mentioned, are now possible now that if we put not only the property of the asset, but also the game logic itself. What if we don't only decentralize and make and enhance the permissionlessness of incomposability of assets, but of utility as well? And that's what the on-chain gaming community is trying to build. So think of it as trying to build to games what DeFi brought to finance. With DeFi, you have all these composable Legos that you can use. You can reuse a lending protocol over here, you can use an AMM tool over there, and everything works seamlessly. And that's the same thing that the on-chain gaming community is trying to build by leveraging more of the blockchain. So you could have a character that lives in a game and you reuse it into another one. Or you reuse the exact same system, for instance, for trading or to move your character, or maybe your character exists across 30 different games, or you have games within games. The list goes on. You have different ways of achieving this. One of them is to run your game entirely on the blockchain. And as we know, that's actually fairly expensive because games are very computationally intensive. They are very expansive in the sense that you have lots of things, you have lots of data that is stored on chain, a lot more than for DeFi. So the great feature that Cairo and Starknet provides is a provable language. What the way Starknet works is we do all the hard stuff on Starknet, and then we bundle all the transactions into a single proof that we verify on Ethereum. That's basically how zero validity rollups work. And the cool thing that we have on Starknet is we have a language that allows you to do this. But then you can write a game in Cairo, but you don't have to deploy it on the blockchain. You could just play it on your computer locally, and then using the open source provers that have recently been released, you can produce a proof of your game, and you verify this on the blockchain. So if you had a game that required, I don't know, 20,000 transactions, you do the 20,000 transactions on your computer where they don't cost anything. And then you just create a single proof of this that is verified on the blockchain. And this is why Dojo is called a provable game engine. It means that because Dojo is built using Cairo, you can build your game and you can choose to either run it directly on Starknet, on layer 3, or have parts of your game running locally. And that's a very important thing because it allows you to do much more massive scale kind of things. If you think about, and I'll stop after this, an analogy, it would be, think of World of Warcraft. You have the other world where all the characters see each other and you can see that this guy has a flame sword and it's really cool. But then when you go and play in a dungeon with your friends, you're not part of the rest of the world. You're in your own little shard. So that you could mimic this and say that the overworld is the layer 2. But then when you play on your dungeon, maybe it's just a temporary blockchain between you and your 3 friends. And at the end of your session, you just send one proof back to the layer 2, where you get all your experience points, all your loot, all the monsters that you've killed. And this doesn't cost you 20,000 transactions. This costs you a single transaction, and that's why it's super cool. We're very early in these explorations, but it's the one thing that is impossible to do, or very difficult to do, if you're not using the Starknet stack.
Great. That's a great idea to solve the problem regarding computation for like heavy games that require so much computations. Technically speaking, how do you think about this, Gabe? Do you think this is like a huge potential in the future that we should focus on building it?
Yeah, I would say that, kind of going back to, my first answer, perspective on the greater ecosystem is that, a provable game engine like Dojo built using Cairo, a natively provable language, kind of enables a whole new realm of possibilities for the types of games and core game mechanics that you can build. So Sylv mentioned the World of Warcraft example, which I think is a really interesting one. And, there's some great tweet threads out there where you can kind of, learn about like if you were to rebuild kind of the World of Warcraft tiered structure using like a fractal scaling model on Starknet. But I think that there's also kind of other cool like core game mechanics that, like the teams that are currently building as part of the Dojo game jams will likely uncover as they're continuing to kind of, explore what's possible and be creative. So like one example that I like was a game that Terrence from the Cartridge team built as a part of a presentation that he did at ECC earlier this summer. The game was called Drive AI, and the concept was very simple. You would train an AI to like drive this car for you down the road. And there's all kinds of like obstacles and like other cars and like, debris or whatever in the street. And if you hit it, the car, crashes and you lose. And so when the game starts, there's like 30 or 40 cars. I forget the exact number. And they're all driving using the same AI model. And, the car that gets the furthest, that's your high score. And so really the game is not you driving the car. The game is you training a model that can achieve that high score. And so you have this kind of like fundamental problem of like, well, how do you prove that the model that you designed adhered to the rules and constraints and that you didn't cheat? But also, if you expose the model that you built, then someone can just copy it and improve upon it, and your high score becomes irrelevant. So using a provable engine like Dojo, what you can do is when you create your model, you can also create a proof that proves that you followed the rules and that the AI model that you created was legitimate and that you weren't cheating, but without exposing what that model actually is. So that's something that you couldn't achieve, if you weren't building it on, this kind of Dojo stack. So that's another example of, a new kind of core game loop that becomes enabled by this technology. But like I said, we can't predict the future. So it would be impossible to sit here and just, list all of these use cases. It's going to be this really interesting process over the course of the next, 12 or however many months as these teams start to explore what's possible using Cairo and using Dojo. There'll be a lot of cool stuff for us to see.
Cool. Thank you very much. It's kind of like a new experiment that take time for teams to implement it and trying out what works and what's not, right? Great. Do you have any question, Noah, for the guest? Or does anyone want to?
Yeah, first of all, I think, let's see if Luis and Loaf would like to add something on that.
I just want to say an interesting thing, though, about something, like for me, the sort of true first iteration of Autonomous Sword is Second Life. If people remember this. Second Life is this game that came out in 2007 and 2008. And it became very big and then very, very like sort of shrink. And so I looked up recently, and I was actually curious how many people still connect daily to Second Life. And there were still 50,000 people who would connect daily to Second Life. And I was thinking, like, this is kind of crazy to me that this thing that we believe to be dead is still the everyday place of gathering for a small town. And there is, and it kind of like the one of the things that sort of like struck the strongest understanding to me about Autonomous Word is there is this podcast from 99% Invisible, which is like 90% Invisible is a very big podcast in the US about design. And there was an episode in 2015 about the end of Sims Online. And Sims Online was a failed attempt by Sims to the life simulation game to basically turn into an MMORPG. But towards the end, it wasn't a success, so no one really cared. But towards the end, there were still 1,000 people connecting daily to Sims Online. And the whole episode is listening to the recording of the people talking to each other. And this, like, one of I'm curious for the Autonomous Word guys, how they see this kind of like, how can you make this the type of world unstoppable? I understand it's the ultimate goal, but how do you make it interesting enough from the get-go for this apocalyptic event of, going, this world disappearing, being attracting enough from the get-go? Like, how can I make people care that this world that they don't know yet might be the place they're actually going to spend their life on? And what I'm missing now, and actually what my friend was missing is, when I was talking about it, is what is attractive enough today in the Autonomous Word space that is not just attractive to the game designer, but attractive to the end user, for them to feel that they should undertake this effort of learning this new game mechanic and this new environment that won't be as smooth and lovely as a AAA game. So it's actually maybe a question more than something to say about it. I'm very curious when the influencer and the smart brains here have to say about these kind of things.
Yeah. No, go for it.
No, please, Jim, feel free to go ahead.
Loaf, I saw you put your mic, so I believe you should start.
No, I think a lot about, I think there's two things. One, it's catching up to being able to provide all of the game mechanics that we can in traditional gaming on blockchain, specifically Starknet here. And, like like Gabe was talking about, when it comes to hiding data and making sure people don't just copy your moves and things like that. That's a huge area that we still are kind of like looking ahead at of like, how do we make games where you can have hidden information and make that easy to implement for games. That's going to be a huge area of research, I think, in the next 12 months or so, that most games are going to require, because you can only you're pretty limited in functionality until you can provide a way to hide things. And so again, there's, I think, a whole bunch more mechanics that we still need to figure out exactly how we're going to do it on Starknet. And that's exciting. That's fun. I mean, it's all doable. It's just, we still have to do it. And then there's the box of mechanics and things like that we don't know that we don't know. I think we have ideas. A lot of people have interesting game ideas, and that'll lead to these new mechanics that are only like possible when you're building on something like Starknet. And that I'm really excited about. Something that I have recently been thinking about is I've played 100 different games in my life, but I've been good at maybe a few. World of Warcraft, I was playing when it first released, and I played League of Legends when it was first released, and I got pretty good at quite a few different games. And I, you have like what we'd be considering like MMR, or your rating, and I think there's a social fabric to kind of certain levels of games, and I think that's going to be something that blockchain really, really, really empowers, is having kind of like social fabric through provable, skill, and that'll weave into many games. rather than you know, a sword in one game is a gun in another. I think the first real composable pieces are going to be communities and scores, and being able to transfer that between games. And so I think that's something that really is empowered through this technology, and I'm excited to explore that more. I'm not a developer, so I think I'll leave the more developer talk to others.
The question that Louis asked about how do we make people care about these worlds is the fundamental question. There was a great blog post by Guilty Gyoza that said mobile game brought casualness to games and blockchain will bring significance. I think that was the word he used. If you look at games that have been around for a really long time, as we mentioned, you have Second Life. You also have a game called EVE Online, for instance. And EVE Online is a game that spans, I think it's more than 20 years old. And EVE Online is not decentralized. EVE Online is a space simulation where you can, it's a very difficult game. It looks more like a day job than a game, I think. But it's still here. And people have been constantly playing for 20 years. It's the same for World of Warcraft. What is interesting here is to say, wait, these games never require decentralization to feel alive. There's a fantastic definition of what a world is by Ian Cheng, who's kind of the pope of worlding, which is the act of like, how do you create a world? And he says that the act of a world builder is to make make the world feel alive. And when a world is alive, it means that it can either die, but it also has enough new things that you're engaged. But I'm not only talking about pure gameplay mechanics. I'm also thinking about people watch mobile racing on YouTube, and somehow that feels real. And that's the kind of thing that we're going for. And what blockchain game can actually provide you is a legitimacy engine. You trust and you're willing to spend the hours in a game in EVE Online because you know that it's a big company with a balance sheet. You know that you're willing to spend money in Fortnite because you know it's a big company with a balance sheet. You're not willing to spend that much money in a small indie game because they can't provide you the same level of reassurance. They don't have the same legitimacy. But that's actually what blockchain can give you, because it's the same thing that for finance and DeFi. Rather than say, oh, I have a massive balance sheet and I'm regulated, you can just say, here, the code is here. I cannot steal any money from you. It's because it's written, code is law, in a sense. And it's the same thing for games. You could either trust me or you can just trust the code that is here, that is running. And that's a legitimacy engine. And that's a super powerful affordance that we have. We're able to help teams build legitimate worlds where people are willing to infuse this world with their envies, with their money, with their time, because they're sure that it's just not going to disappear. And you don't need blockchain to do this, but blockchain is a way to achieve this. The same way that you don't need blockchain to create a financial system, but it's an alternative way of doing it, and it's oddly enough faster to do it with blockchain than with a regular company.
How's my my mic? Is it all right?
Yep.
It's okay.
Your voice is as smooth as usual.
Oh,
Feels
thank
like a sing Beethoven coming to my ear.
Oh, thank you. I'll read you a poem tonight. Yeah, Philip, you said it. I was thinking the exact same thing as you're saying. To me, it's about this permanence that it brings, and like this open sandbox that allows, like Minecraft. To me, like, why is Minecraft, like, so many people don't get Minecraft, but then there's so many people that play Minecraft, and I think Minecraft is so appealing is because it's this sandbox you can build these crazy worlds in. And so, I see it as like what we're trying to do, in a similar vein, where we have some steps to get before we can actually have that level of abstraction and allow people to easily build in these worlds permanent structures, whatever they want. But it's this permanence and this sandbox environments that I think will really elevate these autonomous worlds to like these novel experiences. But it does, like, there's definitely challenges to get to that place, because you need to implement a bunch of standards. And also an analogy that I like to think of is like Ethereum itself. I like Ethereum to me is like the OG autonomous world that allows anyone to build anything in. And so, the Ethereum founders just created the EVM as like the minimum viable physics of Ethereum, and just do whatever you want with it. Write whatever thing you can think of, and from that emerged all the standards, and then from those standards people build on top. And so that's how I that's kind of like an approach that I'm kind of taking, and like the Realms teams think about the Realms world is like just create the most basic level of physics that's just enough to bootstrap a world, and then let people build extensions and build things on top of it, and just let it all happen. It could be chaos, probably will be chaos, but that's how you let a world form. You can't hold anyone back. So yeah. And actually, just I don't know if Sil touched on before I got here, but in the Dojo Game Jam, that was kind of like the experiment that we just ran, and 6 teams or something built extensions into the current live Eternum game that's running on a live Katana hosted by Cartridge at the moment. And so they deployed new systems into the world. One of them was like a casino, another one was like a PvP. There was like another trade system someone implemented. But it's still a lot of work to do to like get it to like a functioning system. But we're at the origins right now.
All right, Love. Gian, I see your hand raising up. Do you still want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch back a little bit on what Sylv said. First of all, I just have to give a shout out to Sylv because he's always got a nugget of wisdom or a quote from someone that I haven't heard, and I always find it extremely insightful. So thank you. I think that your point on blockchain is an alternative to creating these worlds, and is something where it makes games that have permanence easier to build. Is fascinating. But I think while we understand that, and we're all building these things, it's very difficult to like walk up to a random person who plays games and explain to them the difference, and them to really like grasp it and then also agree. It's there's kind of like hurdles that you kind of have to get over, or doors in their mind that you have to open. And I think it's while we all know it's true, and I think 10 years from now people will just be like, oh, of course it is, like it's blockchain, like it's games on blockchain. We're not there yet. And when I say we're not there yet, what I think we really need to do is just like have one thing. Like if all of us bring one thing with our games that users just can't get anywhere else, then we can start convincing people that like these games are cool, these games are interesting, and they have this staying power enabled by this technology. But like that's not what's going to bring them in per se. I don't think. Like if you look at games outside of Starknet, there's some people doing some novel things with their economy, and I think that there's an example would be Parallel to TCG. It's a card. When you mint these cards, they have limited supply, and once that supply is depleted from primary sales, the only way to create new ones, because if you've ever played a TCG, it sucks when there's a really powerful card with a small supply, because it gets banned, or because it's imbalanced and no one can get it, or it's ungodly expensive. And so they've made it so that you can basically, by playing the game, earn renown on these cards and then make new ones. And that's completely player driven. And I found that really fascinating as someone who played Magic the Gathering growing up, and I'm always like trying to get this one card for my vampire deck, and I'm like, I'm not going to spend $600 for this card. I don't want to do it. And so like they've kind of created this mechanic that solves a huge need in their specific game type. So if I look at, influence, or if we look at brick, or we look at dojo or loot rounds, I always try and think, it's like, well, what is the one thing that we're really going to be better at? And Sylv gave a point to EVE Online, and I think that's what influence, like we look at, and like influence is like, okay, well, in EVE Online, people are running $50 million alliances with money circulating through the economy through battle and being destroyed, and they don't own any of it. Like they just have to hope that the game doesn't take anything away or ban them or whatever it might be. And then we say, but no, this is yours now in influence. Like we don't have control over it. I think that is something powerful, and I think if we can continue to make games that have something that's a hook for the audience that we're trying to attract, we'll be able to get to that 10-year mark where people go, oh, of course, on blockchain we have the ability to have more permanence. But right now, people don't know what blockchain can do, and they don't trust it. And outside of people who are already involved or people who are extremely curious.
Very interesting, Gian. And I can notice a lot of passion in all these takes from our guests. And that's very promising for the future of the on-chain Starknet game scene. And yeah, speaking about the future, I also wanted to ask a question. How do you think that the next big Web3 gaming wave will look like? And what kind of narratives could take off during the next 1 or 2 years? Do you think there will be one game in particular that will stand out from all the others, like, for example, Axis Infinity in the previous bull run? Or it will be the situation will unfold in a different way? So yeah, let me know your thoughts on that, starting from Luis. Luis, can you hear us? Then maybe we can start with Sil.
Yep. I think the next game is not gonna look like a game. It's gonna look like something either extremely silly or very strange and very odd, and that's definitely gonna it will be a genre-defining game. I feel the same way that initially people said, "Oh, mobile gaming is not a real game because it needs to be an RPG on a PC for 64 hours." I think it's gonna be like the same thing. It's either gonna be like some sort of a flash game, a text game, a dungeon crawler, or something just very odd, very strange.
Very nice, Sil. And speaking about mobiles, now, I also came up with this follow-up question. How do you think will games written in Cairo look like on mobile? Are you already working for like implementation for mobiles?
The client part is not necessarily the problem. The issue that you have when interacting with mobile and blockchain is how to interact with your wallets. And that's a very nice affordance that we have on Starknet. I think I said affordance 35 times. I will now stop. You can have a key on your smartphone that is allowed to only do a few things. And so you're not creating a brand new wallet every time. So that's definitely a leg up that Starknet has over other ecosystems in terms of mobile gaming, because you get the same level of security, you get the same easy onboarding thanks to WebAuthn that was pioneered by Cartridge. It's just really cool. It just works very, very well.
That's amazing, Sil. And going back to the question about the next big Web3 gaming wave, who would like to answer this one?
Oh, man.
Yeah, I would like to input some of our insight from the island. So I agree with Sil about what is the next successful game, and I just kind of think that it's gonna be something very simple but stupid in a way that make people just so addictive and attractive to playing it, and they forgetting about on other factors behind, like is it built on blockchain or not, what technology is using. It's gonna be a game that's simply so good and so attractive, and could be stupid, like, because I think I have observed the game scenes, some indie games, and there's some games from our country. We're from Vietnam, and 10 years ago there's super famous game called Flappy Bird. If you guys remember, it's just create this whole world trending, that people enjoying the game, playing it because it's so difficult to play, but at the same time it's such a simple game that the guy who made that game just got it in one day, and then he just wrote it out on the app store, and then a few weeks later it's become a international phenomenon, right? So I think some game doesn't need or require such a big deal or such a big theory or game design behind. Sometimes it just come out from a very simple thing, but the main focus is, does your community or does your players really enjoying it, and just focus on that thing. I think it's gonna be the future for the Web3 games.
Thanks, John.
I'll also kind of throw in and kind of offer this perspective that I think that one thing that's unique about Web3 games is that, like, in the traditional gaming, like Web2 space, it's very much like a hits-driven business. Maybe this doesn't apply to kind of series and sequels, but, like, when you launch a game, you spend a tremendous amount of time building it, and when you release it, if it flops, you don't really carry any momentum. The effort's kind of gone to waste. Web3 gaming, in particular, fully on-chain games, which is what the Starknet and kind of Dojo ecosystems are kind of more uniquely interested in, benefit from this kind of compound growth, right? So I'll take Realms as an example. Loaf is, from the, one of the leaders from the Realms ecosystem. Like, that community has been growing and building for well over a year now. And so every time someone kind of introduces something new and interesting into that ecosystem, whether it's an entire game or just kind of a smaller project, it grows and it builds interest, and people are introducing it to their friends, and it continues to grow over time. And that's kind of another dimension of this permanence that we've been talking about. It's not just that one game has permanence, it's that this entire ecosystem and the lore behind it continues to grow and compound over time. So, I don't necessarily it doesn't even have to be kind of like one particular game that's going to like hit and kind of blow up and have like millions of people playing. But I think that it's the ecosystems that have already kind of sown these seeds over the last year and a half, 2 years. Realms is one of them. The Dopeworks ecosystem is another. Brick has been, kind of going wild in the Starknet space over the, these are the ecosystems that I think are going to continue to compound and grow, and they're going to have this kind of base of players who are already interested in their games, so that when new stuff comes out in that ecosystem, it already has kind of almost like a built-in audience. So I think that the way that these games are going to grow is a little bit different now.
Very good, Gabe. Thanks a lot. Is there anyone who would like to add something on that? Luis, Love? Okay, pretty much so. Well, guys,
I'll just add one thing just to round up. Yeah, I mean, just to wind back like 2 years ago when this whole kind of like on-chain shenanigans was starting to happen, starting to emerge. I didn't have a single clue about like what the successful games would look like, to be honest. I just knew there was a space that had to be explored, and we'll probably figure it out as we went. Like most of these kind of fringe technologies, you just kind of need to explore things. And so I kind of see 3 different types of games and kind of emerging right now. And so I see this is specifically on-chain games. So and I think one of these types of games will probably will bring in a huge amount of new participants and new players into the space. And like the first type is like these really short session based games that these are fully on chain. and they're kind of like roguelike single player experiences. And this is like Ryo Season 1 and 2 and like Loot Survivor. They go for like 5 minutes and you can just play them on your phone. And so they're very like penetrate into the market very easily because you can ship these things on PWAs. And if nobody knows what a PWA is, it's just kind of like those web apps that you can install on your phone, and they kind of feel like a real app, but like there's no app store. And so we can actually target like non-crypto natives very easily through these things. And now with the account abstraction, you can do that quite elegantly as well. And then you have like the second type, which are kind of like you call them kind of like longer session-based games. And these are kind of I mean, a good example would be like putting Monopoly on chain, for example. Monopoly might have like 10 people playing in it, and you as the game creator, you create a lobby, and 9 other people can join your game. And the whole game is run on chain, obviously, and so the game plays out, and the winner wins something. Maybe there's like a stake to get into the game. Maybe it's like a token, or maybe it's USDC or something. But by doing that, if you create a very competitive game, and so that's the key, is like creating a very competitive game. But if you do that and you use the blockchain, you can create this, anti-cheat environment where you can just trust the blockchain and everyone's acting truthfully, right? And you can also use the blockchain as escrow. And so that's a really exciting area that we're pushing on. And then there's like the third type, which are like these giant, MMO style games, like influence like Realms Eternum, and there are others around. And these are like huge ecosystems. And as Gabe said, they're like these are communities that have like been through the last 2 years together, and they're very tight knit. And they play these games. These games might be like slower paced, but they're going to go forever, and they have this level of permanence that we've just been talking about. So those are like the 3 categories that I see kind of emerging right now. Maybe there'll be more in the future, I don't know, but those are like roughly the 3 that I see. And these ecosystems that we've just been talking about in these ecosystems, and everybody will play it. Oh no, I think I disconnected. Does it disconnect?
No,
No,
we can
My
still
phone
hear
said
you.
it disconnected. I was talking to a wall. So yeah, those are the 3 games. I to be honest, I think I don't know. I feel like the most viral game will be one of these session-based games that are highly competitive and they have some level of stakes to them. Just because those 2 factors of like anti-cheat and the ability to like stake something into a game is very compelling to like a lot of people on the planet. And so if someone cracks that puzzle and makes a very like easy to install PWA app that's very a highly competitive game and has those features, it's going to go bananas. And that's like a totally novel experience that you couldn't do previously. So yeah.
So great, no? And before ending this great session, guys, is there any one of you who would like to briefly answer to this question from Lydia from the audience, which reads, can you explain the play to earn mechanism in game 5? So, and also like your ideal definition of a sustainable play to earn mechanism on chain gaming.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll take this. I mean, I personally don't think that we should be striving for kind of the play to earn that we saw from Axie. It's just not sustainable. But all these games are fully on chain. You own your assets, and so if you play and you compete and you're good at these games, then you earn a higher stake than most others. And at that point, you choose what you want to do. But I think I need to emphasize that it's skill that gets you there. It's not just grinding quests or something and expecting to make a living off of grinding some basic quests in a game.
Very well, Gabe. Thanks a lot. And well, guys, we tell me, John. Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to add to this play to earn narrative because we have been researching about it, and I agree that play and earn is actually inevitable when you build a Web3 game on a blockchain gaming, right? But the thing here is like you have to carefully think about your activities, your in-game activities and in-game mechanisms, so that people don't just get rich overnight or farming or just start grinding your game and just start to kill the whole ecosystem. You have to build such activities that not just give the chance for them to earn something, but they have to pay back something by doing activities within your games. And like Jean from Influence said, it's about skills, it's about maybe your luck also, and you have to spend time to get it. And I think it should be a progress reward, and it should be unpredictable reward, so that nobody can strategically grinding your game to just focus on getting the reward, just like the Axie or Step N. I heard people just like have 100 accounts and start hiding cheap labor to do grinding it, because they know for sure that every day they can earn a certain amount of token or certain amount of reward just for doing repeated activities. And I think that is the factor that's missing from the last booming of GameFi, and we have learned a lot from it, and now we try to experiment new mechanism, new ways of applying into your game, so that it can counter this problem of play and earn. And I'm not against play and earn. I highly encourage it, but again, we need to really thoughtfully think about it. That's my opinion on that one.
Very enlightening view on the play to earn mechanics, John. And well, we've come to the end of our episode, where we had a very insightful journey throughout the fascinating world of on-chain gaming, and how this field is being developed on Starknet, on the Starknet scaling solution. And first of all, I would love to thank all the listeners who came here to listen to us live. I also saw a lot of gaming OGs from the Rams and cartridge teams, and also other minds from the gaming scene. And hopefully we'll be hosting them in the next episodes of this kind of roundtable format that we'll be trying bringing again at the Star Cafe together with John from Dylan's. And I also wanted to remind the audience to see each other tomorrow at the Star Cafe, as we host Edi Sinovcic to talk about Space Shard and Nimbora, which was also launched today. Nimbora is a new DeFi platform experimenting with DeFi pooling from DL1. Furthermore, this Friday at 2 p.m. UTC, we are kicking up a new special Star Cafe monthly series called Meet the Foundation, where we'll explore the mission and the activities of the Starknet Foundation, while also meeting its members, beginning with its CEO, Diego Oliva. So make sure not to miss the live session, as there could be a nice surprise. And having said that, obviously, thanks a lot to all of our guests, such as Gabe, Gian, Sil, Loaf, Luis, and John as well. Thanks a lot for co-hosting this amazing episode. So thanks a lot, guys, for coming.
Cheers.
Thanks.
See you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks all. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. So it's time to close. Remember to share the Starknet vibe, and see you the next time.